I'm Sarah Westwood, and I'm here today with energy and environment reporter Josh Siegel. Josh, thanks for being here today. So, you have a story in this week's magazine about President Biden's pledge to cut US emissions in half by the year 2030. Has the administration offered any specifics on how it plans to achieve that goal?
So as of now, they are not providing a ton of detail on how to meet the goal. They're saying we have multiple pathways to do it. But the reason they're doing that is I think they just don't know how much cooperation they can bank on from Congress versus executive actions. And this will need cooperation from Congress, most notably its infrastructure proposal that really is, very much a climate change, clean energy bill. I mean, it's 3/4 of the funding is for climate change related initiatives, electric vehicle development, resilience measures. There's actually a mandate for utilities to use a certain amount of electricity from zero carbon emitting sources. So that's really what they're banking on to really get a jump start on this goal. But the problem, of course, is we don't know if it'll pass. So they don't want to. I guess they don't want to overstate how much they would lead on this. So I think they're deliberately maybe underplaying that a little bit and saying that, well, there's some executive authorities we can use around regulating power plants and transportation, but that takes time. Going through the regulatory process, the Trump administration weakened rules in those areas, so they'd have to go through and undo all of that. So definitely that wouldn't do it all on its own. And then the courts, of course, would have a say if you go executive. So I think they're purposely being a little bit vague because they just don't know what cooperation they can get from Congress.
How has the business community been reacting to this emissions pledge from the Biden administration?
So I'd say as a whole, the business community, as far as business lobby groups like the Chamber of Commerce, American Petroleum Institute, which represents oil and gas, I think they're happy that the U.S. is re-engaged in international climate diplomacy, is part of the Paris Agreement again. That was something obviously Trump didn't have much interest in. He removed the U.S. from Paris, so they're happy to see that. But I'd say that the target, while they're not out saying this target is not achievable and is going to harm us, they're also not effusively praising it. And when you talk to people behind the scenes, when you talk to lobbyists, a lot of it is, well, the math just kind of isn't doable right now. I mean, the U.S. has led the world in emissions reductions since 2005, but it's been almost entirely through electricity and through natural gas actually replacing coal and renewables as well.
Let's shift gears a little bit and talk about that infrastructure proposal from the Biden administration that you mentioned earlier. You mentioned it being sort of a climate change plan in disguise. Walk us through a little bit more of the energy and climate related projects that are tucked into that proposal.
Yeah, so a lot of it is things along the lines of what we've actually seen from Congress before, including measures that have Republican support. So last year's year-end spending bill in December quietly had a big package of measures that would basically fund research and development into clean energy technologies that are needed to really decarbonize the U.S. economy. So things like carbon capture for fossil fuel plants to prevent emissions from actually entering the atmosphere. You have advanced nuclear reactors, which would help. Nuclear has been struggling economically. These smaller reactors are supposedly going to be cheaper and safer, but they're still a couple of years out from being ready. So funding these kind of technologies, there's more of that in this bill. So there is a level of, okay, we've done this before. This makes sense for both parties, but there are measures that are, the level of spending in here is beyond what we've done before. And then also there's an element of, really putting the pedal to the metal on electric vehicles in a way that we haven't seen, funding electric vehicle charging stations, the build out of those. Also, there's also a big emphasis on incentivizing manufacturers, for example, that maybe produce fossil fuel equipment for fossil fuels now to actually retool to build wind turbines, solar panels, batteries that are used in electric vehicles. So there's incentives to do that. And then, as I said, there's also this what's known as a clean electricity standard that essentially says utilities, you must generate entirely zero carbon electricity by the Biden administration's goal is 2035 to do that. So that would take a huge acceleration. I think right now we're at 40% zero carbon sources in our electricity mix. So you'd have to see more than doubling of that this decade. So those are just a few things, and we'll see. I mean, I think they're going to try for reconciliation for some of these measures. You might see broken up into multiple packages. So we'll have to see how they try to do it.
Josh, thanks so much for being here today with us.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. It was fun.
You can find more of Josh's reporting every weekday morning by subscribing to his newsletter, Daily on Energy, and 24/7 at WashingtonExaminer.com.